Imagine a time lost in the folds of ancient history, when the world was vast and filled with untold mysteries. Civilizations rose from the dust, and the African continent, at the heart of this unfolding history, was not only the cradle of human life, but also the birthplace of knowledge, wisdom, and spiritual truths that would shape the entire world. In this journey, we will explore the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Book of Enoch, and the Book of Adam and Eve. These ancient texts, though originating from different regions and cultures, weave a tapestry of shared stories, struggles, and spiritual journeys. As we dig deeper into the significance of these narratives, we'll also explore how the ancient African worldview played a crucial role in shaping the stories of immortality, the afterlife, and human existence. The quest for immortality. The Gilgamesh paradox. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a tale as old as time. Emerging from the ancient city of Uruk, Gilgamesh, the mighty king, embarks on a journey of self-discovery. In his pursuit of immortality, he confronts the very essence of life and death, challenging the gods themselves. His story, etched in Sumerian cuneiform around 2100 BCE, speaks to something universally human, the desire to transcend mortality. But here's where it gets interesting. Gilgamesh was not alone in asking these questions. Ancient African civilizations, including Egypt and Nubia, had already deeply explored themes of life after death. The Book of the Dead, an Egyptian funerary text, illustrates the profound understanding of the soul's journey and the quest for divine favor. The Egyptian gods, much like those in Gilgamesh's world, govern the realms of life and death, providing insight into what happens beyond this world. These shared themes show that the cultures of Mesopotamia and Africa were not isolated. They were connected through universal existential questions. Gilgamesh's search for immortality is very much aligned with the African worldview that understands death not as an end, but as part of an eternal cycle of existence. The Book of Enoch, Ethiopian wisdom in the ancient world. The Book of Enoch is one of the most fascinating and important texts in human history. While it is often associated with ancient Jewish traditions, its origins lie in Ethiopia. Written in Ge'ez, an ancient Ethiopian script, this text provides a detailed account of Enoch, an ancient patriarch who ascends to heaven and receives divine knowledge. In Enoch's narrative, we find similar themes to those in the Epic of Gilgamesh, including divine intervention, cosmic battles, and the fate of humanity. In the Book of Enoch, Noah, the biblical figure known for surviving the flood, is described as the first recorded albino, a detail often overlooked in mainstream interpretations. This is a significant aspect of African history, as it highlights the deep spiritual importance placed on unique individuals in ancient African cultures. The figure of Noah, born with unusual physical characteristics, is viewed as divinely chosen and marked for a pivotal role in history. This ties directly to the broader African theological perspective that the divine chooses those with distinct traits to fulfill greater purposes. It suggests that the original African Jews, based in Ethiopia, were not only custodians of spiritual wisdom, but also influenced the very foundations of what we now recognize as Judeo-Christian traditions. The Book of Enoch wasn't just influential in Ethiopia, its impact stretched across the ancient world. Early Christian communities, especially those in Africa, adopted many of its teachings, which later influenced theological thought in the Middle East and Europe. The Book of Adam and Eve, another layer of the African story. The Book of Adam and Eve, an apocryphal text that fills in gaps left by the Genesis account, explores the human experience in a way that connects deeply with the African worldview. This story is not just about Adam and Eve's fall from grace, it's about humanity's search for redemption and spiritual enlightenment. In many African cultures, the creation story is not simply about the beginning of life, but a spiritual journey. The notion of sin and redemption in the Book of Adam and Eve speaks to the core of African spiritual philosophy, where human life is viewed as a constant journey of spiritual growth, return, and enlightenment. The connection between these themes and African thought is profound, reflecting the cyclical nature of existence found in many African religions. As we explore the Book of Adam and Eve, we also see parallels to the Epic of Gilgamesh. Both stories center around the idea of exile and the quest for spiritual return. In Adam and Eve's case, they are exiled from the Garden of Eden, just as Gilgamesh is exiled from his search for immortality. This idea of being cast out and striving to return speaks to the shared human experience of overcoming struggle and seeking redemption. A shared ideology connecting the dots. As we continue to explore the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Book of Enoch, and the Book of Adam and Eve, a profound realization emerges. These texts are connected by a shared ideology, one rooted in African spirituality. The quest for immortality, the flood narrative, and the themes of exile and redemption all transcend individual cultures. They are universal, deeply human stories that transcend time and space. The African influence on these stories becomes clearer when we examine the way ancient civilizations interacted. From Egypt to Sumer, from Ethiopia to Mesopotamia, these cultures were deeply interconnected. They exchanged ideas, traded goods, and shared spiritual wisdom. African thought and African civilization formed the bedrock upon which much of the world's spiritual narratives were built. The gods and deities of Africa, like the great god Ra in Egypt, spoke to the very same spiritual truths that the gods in Gilgamesh's world would later express. Ancient African religions were not just stories, they were profound understandings of the universe, the divine, and humanity's place within it. Ancient languages and authors, unveiling the origins. To understand these texts fully, we must also appreciate the languages in which they were written. The Epic of Gilgamesh was written in Sumerian and Akkadian cuneiform, while the Book of Enoch was written in Ge'ez, an ancient Ethiopian language. The Book of Adam and Eve was likely written in Aramaic or Greek, and many early Hebrew texts were also influenced by these languages. Each of these texts was written by authors who were not merely chroniclers, but spiritual leaders, those who shaped and transmitted their culture's most sacred wisdom. The authors of these works were deeply embedded in the spiritual and philosophical traditions of their societies. Their writings were meant to preserve knowledge, offer guidance, and challenge the people to reflect on their connection to the divine. A call to reclaim our shared legacy. As we conclude this exploration, it's crucial to understand the profound impact that Africa had on the ancient world, not only through physical contributions, but through intellectual and spiritual leadership. The interconnectedness of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Book of Enoch, and the Book of Adam and Eve illustrates a powerful truth. Humanity shares a universal spiritual heritage, one deeply rooted in African traditions. By embracing these stories, we reclaim our shared legacy. We acknowledge the spiritual and philosophical wisdom that Africa has imparted to the world and recognize the interconnectedness of human civilization. The narratives of Gilgamesh, Enoch, and Adam and Eve are not just ancient myths. They are reflections of the universal truths that bind all of humanity together. We encourage you to reflect on these ancient texts, not just as relics of the past, but as guiding lights for the future. By understanding our shared history, we can create a more connected and compassionate world.